Welcome to the Craig and Greg Show, presented by Maximize Leadership. Here are Craig Owens and Greg Harris.
Hey, welcome to the Craig and Greg Show. I'm Craig. This is Greg. We are glad to be back with you, and we are happy to be able to share some content with you every month, and we especially like when you give us some suggestions of something that you'd like us to dive into a little bit more and share some thoughts with you. And we're happy to do that. Maximize Podcast on Twitter is where you can reach out to us and let us know some thoughts that you have or some subjects for our discussion. Greg, there's a cliche that gets used, and I think that sometimes people want to wear it like as a badge of success, and I don't think that it really is at all when somebody says that it's lonely at the top.
Mm-hmm. You have a badge on your shirt.
Yeah, like that.
That's so. I think badges, and some folks, want to be the martyr, and I really sacrificed a lot, and so forth. I think the whole lonely at the top might be a little bit of a transference to say, I really don't want to be that close to people. I wonder, lonely at the top really shouldn't be that way. If you are leading, as we've both been privileged to lead, and we've been around wonderful leaders to learn.
Right.
That's what leaders do, is they develop the candidate or the emerging leader team to actually not do it alone. I mean,
Right.
there's a Richard DeVos, one of the Amway founders. He had a really cool quote years ago. He goes, "We all need each other. There's no self-made person."
Absolutely.
And I think leaders need to be a little more relaxed, that it's not about they have to have it all together and they can't rely on it. It's not a sign of weakness.
Well, do you think that it's lonely at the top because, or they're saying that because they didn't want anybody to come with them, or they don't know how to bring people with them?
It's probably all of it. And I wouldn't be able to address, the listeners today on, what kind of leader are you, and without meeting them, obviously, when we do our coaching program. But I think the thing that probably comes into play more than anything is trust. So if you're going to be a leader of a group or an entity or an organization or the entire, you have to figure out who you can trust and what to trust, whether it's data, whether it's their words, if it's a little too peachy and cheesy. I think that's the challenge for a lot of leaders is who. I also find some leaders are talented in leading, but it doesn't mean they're talented in befriending.
Yeah.
And I think hearing people talk about, their leadership journeys, and we've all had the chance to meet them and talk with them as coaches, sometimes I think they don't know who to be when they're not leading.
Yes.
Not that it's an identity, but it's okay to join someone and let them lead, practice, flex their muscles like Ian's doing. He's lifting now.
Yeah.
But I think that's the challenge for being leadership. I think there's a development piece that correlates friends. How do you develop friendship as a leader? As same as how do you develop other leaders? I think there's a real same road. And I believe for many leaders, unfortunately, they don't know where to start.
So for a leader on the top that doesn't want to be lonely, does that leader have to, everybody that's around him, does it have to be his friends that are with him?
I think two pieces. A healthy organization doesn't require the leader to have friends close by. Not all of them. I think we can get into the leader's situation. They need friends close by, partly for accountability, partly for bouncing ideas off. I've said this before in sales leadership. You and I are going to go down on a call and we're going to meet a client. Your sets of ears might hear something slightly different than what I was looking for or paid attention to.
Right.
And so if you think about explorers in teams that, whether they sailed across the world or, Lewis and Clark across America, there were people together. It wasn't one person doing it. And I think sometimes leaders, get stuck with, I can do it myself much easier than with a team, but then the team is not included or is empowered.
Yeah.
So it's a challenge one.
Yeah, and I think that certainly you can be friendly with everyone. But I think that there's the idea of like, I want to bring all these people around me that are my friends or have to become my friends. That's just not going to happen. You know, friendships don't develop that way.
No.
And so I think that it's really good when a leader has friends that are maybe peers in other organizations that can be kind of that like, hey, let me, you're looking at it from your industry's eyes. I'm over here and I got a different perspective from my industry, but I think I see something that might be able to help you. I think that those are our friends, but I think as well that leaders need to find ways, how do you connect with the other people on your team to advance them to their own next level? It doesn't necessarily have to be the level that I'm on because they're not ready for that one yet, but I can find the next level that they're going to go to. And there's no reason for me to be lonely.
No, there's a good friend of mine. He moved from one state to another and then took over an organization. And I remember his sentence like it was yesterday, and it was probably 10, 12 years ago. He said, I came in and I trooped in not knowing who were my allies and who were my adversaries. And that's part of our leadership challenge, listeners, is when you move to another organization or you start an organization like an entrepreneur, it's tough to know who's an ally and who are adversaries, like their own agendas. And I think it becomes more difficult for leaders if they have to, kind of let someone else in. They have to think way more for the other person than just natural reaction. So
sure.
I was with a few organizations in my career and really appreciated a lot of the people. One of the things I noticed in teams of leaders, ironically, and not going to toot the horn on sports, but if someone can be in a sports team, basketball, soccer, volleyball, baseball, whatever it is, they learn how to work together.
Yes.
Like if you're the shortstop and I'm the center fielder and there's a fly ball that goes over your head, we have to know, can I get it coming in from center field, or can you get it short enough from shortstop? Where I think people who didn't play on a team, could have been drama or band. We all, they're all teams. But if they did individual sports, I find that to be a little bit of the Achilles heel. So a person who played tennis, singles, or golfed by themselves, or bowling, or any other sport that's kind of solo, there wasn't the reliance on a team. You didn't have to become more aware and empower and empathize with your team. Because the better you can bring the team along as a leader, the better the organization will be, and you'll probably be insulated not to be out there on your own, kind of how wildlife can kind of go after the stray, and sometimes lone wolves are the ones that leaders crash, and you might have an example.
Sure. Oh, well, yeah. I mean, I've seen that. We talked about that in the briefly in the previous episode about one chapter in my book about leaders that when they were on their own, that's when they stumbled.
Yeah.
But so no, one of the things that I hear you saying here is, as a leader, there isn't a cookie cutter formula for bringing other people along so that you're not lonely at the top. You're bringing other people, but I know that there's some common things that work across the board. Why don't you share a couple of those things that you've discovered that work everywhere?
I think, one admittance for me, being in leadership quite a long time and having the chance to, be with people, I think the part that we do have to deal with as leaders is the pace. We've been thinking about it as leaders. We're we're in charge of a meeting or an agenda or a board meeting or something, or a vision casting or a budget meeting, whatever it is. We're kind of in it. We make the mistake, I do, this is another mistake confession, that I'm assuming everyone around the table is at the same lap.
Yep.
And you have to kind of slow down, and that's tough for leaders because they want to get the meeting going and get done.
And you've thought about it for a long time,
right? And
this is the first time that they're hearing it. So
it's almost like we made the assumption they're with us. No, we have to get them with us, and it takes a little bit to pull and push. That's one of the tough parts about leadership, is to know when to do either. There's a few, I think, ingredients to a good relationship that a leader needs. One of the fears for that leader, which will be explained in the next few qualities, is they maybe aren't sure if they let someone close, they might know I don't have it all together.
Yep.
And I don't care for this statement, fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
It might be a motivational sentence for somebody, but I just don't care for that one, because faking it is really going to be the challenge for the team.
Yes.
They're like, he's full of baloney.
Authenticity is so much more attractive.
Oh, my goodness. And it's not an arrogance.
No.
It's a confidence that authenticity is, yeah, he's okay with his flaw. I mean, he acknowledges it, and he knows we can contribute, and he wants that. Or she's really good at this, and that's her space to, contribute. I just wrote down a couple ingredients I think are really key for leaders, myself included, and probably these are more my notes for me than, and maybe the listeners will apply them, but I think character is first, kind of beyond anything else. I've heard someone say, well, charisma is really important. It can be. I mean, you have to convey a message, you have to recruit people, et cetera. I mean, charisma is attractive, but to me, it's not a substance.
No.
It's an experience, So the substance would be character. And if you and I are on the same page, we might have a couple sentences that are a little different, but the same page, we have something to work with. Without character, like the differences in character, we're probably going to have questions or doubt of, okay, so does he really mean that?
Right, exactly.
Or will he do what he said, or whatever. Yep. So I think one of the other ones I think are important is compassion. Compassion as a pastor, you have that, or compassion as leaders, we have to have that, or compassion as a dad, we have to have that. And compassion, I like the word, so it has passion, which I really think is critical, because it's attractive. Like, they have compassion. I'm drawn to them. Once in a while, you and I will laugh about, I was at a store and someone came up to me and just started talking. Well, I must have that face. We've laughed about that.
Right.
But that must be the compassion face that they see.
Sure.
I think consistency probably is my other one. When a leader, I've seen it, unfortunately, it doesn't feel good when they come in like, this is my meeting, but you haven't seen them in 3 days. And I thought, I think it's Patrick Lencioni, one of our favorite authors. I think he was leading a leadership summit, and one sentence struck me. He goes, I'm really going to define leadership down to something really simple: present.
Yep.
And present, that consistency of, I can always count on Craig. He'll call me back, or his door is open. And I think leaders get in trouble with closing their doors, or the leaders on the top floor, and the minions can't get to them, whatever, right. I think that's a tough one. And I think the other part for leading teams, particularly as we don't really wrestle, we have to just acknowledge we're going to have diversity, whether it's lifestyles or color or where they went to school, or academics, or maybe even income, or married, not married, whatever it happens to be. I think the commonalities for us as leaders to really find friends.
Yes.
Well, you grew up in the South. Your Southern twang is kind of bothering, but everything else is there: character, compassion, etc. So I think it's important for us to really wrestle with commonality and say we have way more in common, particularly if you're on a team in an organization. Like, what's the goal? Teaching, or selling, or servicing, or manufacturing, or building, whatever. It's commonalities, but we tend to look at the differences. Yep. Oh, you're right-handed. Huh? Yeah. Well, you're left-handed. Huh? Yeah. And the differences start to make a problem for us. They get us trapped.
Well, I think I love the idea of the consistency, or the present, because if a leader is around other people, the more that they're around other people, the more they're going to recognize there's a person of character.
Yep.
There's a person that's got real compassion. There's a person that's been consistent. Those are the kind of things that you can you don't recognize it if you're in your office on the top floor with the door closed, and nobody can get in to see you, and you don't get out to see anybody. Right. Then it is going to be lonely on the top, because you're never going to be around those people. I like. I don't know who said it, but the quote went something like this: a friendship is born at that moment when one person says to another, "What, you too? I thought I was the only one."
Right.
And so, but you have to be around that person to go, "Oh, you see it the same way I
Right.
do." Oh,
Yeah, it could be hey, that's wrong. Oh, you think it's wrong too? Good. That's justice or whatever.
Exactly.
You're right. You're right.
And so then, okay, so now we've got something we can begin to build on, and then you can start seeing the other things. But boy, I tell you what, when I think back through my history, some of the poorer leaders that I would have been around were the ones that kind of made their pass through in the office and then went in and closed their door, and they were, I'm here in the inner sanctum.
Yeah,
and,
unavailable. Right.
And they're just simply not around to know what's going on. So how do you bring other people along?
Yeah.
There isn't.
I think in wrapping up real quick for the readers or listeners here, I think the challenge we have as leadership needing friendship, I believe the leader has to start it. There's a lot of people who want to be around a leader, but the leader has to be able to say, I want people around. I want to know what's going on. I want to know what's important to you. And some of the most complimentary things I know have been paid to you, and I've received compliments for, is, he took the time to care.
Yes.
It really isn't pixie dust or rocket science, but it seems to be the difference maker.
That's true.
And I think the part that is, Patrick Lencioni has one of my favorite titled books called Get Naked, which is basically about being transparent or authentic. And it's very difficult, leaders, to have people follow us, join us, if they don't know who we are.
Right.
I think, Greg's solid. Craig seems pretty good, but I'm sure he has struggles. And it's much easier for them to assimilate with us in friendship. Yep. It can be kind of dry, when the organization's going into bad times. It seems very easy to lead when it's in good times. It's very similar to our prayer life. It's a great day. Oh, golly, I haven't prayed to God yet. Oh, it's a horrible week. I'm going to pray every day. And leaders, we can't turn it off, turn it on.
Right.
It has to be the consistent piece. And we get weary. And I think the challenge for us when we're in leadership or on a team, we need that energy that goes back and forth. And it's a pick-me-up.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it doesn't cost a lot. Like one of my favorite things, it doesn't cost much to be kind. So it's the same way. It doesn't cost much to care. And I think the more we're in leadership, the more we find out it really isn't, gold nuggets. It's actually just common kindness and inclusion and understanding. And it isn't easy. But Moses, wasn't a super orator in the Bible, had a very key leadership role for the Israelites in the Old Testament. But in the end, he got tired, and he had two people, Aaron and Hur, and they held up his arms because he got so weak. And I think that's a semblance of we're just done. And, I have energy now because he came alongside. Yep. So wrap up with that story.
Well, leaders, listen, we don't want you to try to go alone in your leadership. If you are feeling like it is lonely at the top or nobody's around me, that's not a healthy place for you to be, and it's going to be hard for you to sustain your leadership. And that's part of the reason why we designed the coaching huddles, is not only are we involved with you, but we're going to get you plugged in with other leaders as well, and you're going to have that circle of people that you can pour out into them and receive what they have to give to you as well. So go to maximizeleadership.com. We've got a link on there about our coaching huddles. You can read a little bit more about that. And even if you're just somewhat interested in getting involved, fill out the form on there and let us know, and then we can get back to you and fill in some of the details for you. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and follow us on Twitter as well, so that you are aware every time that a new episode of the Craig and Greg Show drops. We'll talk to you soon.
Get in touch with Craig and Greg through Twitter at Maximize Podcast or at MaximizeLeadership.com. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any episodes of the Craig and Greg Show.